It's 9 p.m. in the East. It's a Monday. So that means Unfound Live is here. Hope everybody is doing well. I'm doing fantastic. Getting things done today. Got a lot of different things done today. Have to get things done today because for some reasons that I will be talking about here in a few minutes. Hope all of you are doing well since the last time we got together. I have a fantastic information-filled show ready for all of you, as I usually do. As you can see in the title for tonight, we're going to go over what is in some places called the most famous YouTube video disappearance in history. That would be of Lars Mittank, the guy who ran out of an airport in Bulgaria some years ago. Many of you have seen that video. I'm going to analyze it tonight. I'm going to read some things that were written about his disappearance at the time. This is a disappearance. Of course, it's not in the United States, so it's not on NamUs or on the Charlie Project, but it has its own Wikipedia page, so that counts for something. So I'm going to take a look at that tonight for all of you, see what you think. You can post something in the comments. Also, I'm going to get into Cherrie Mahan. I've talked about Cherrie before. It's kind of, I wouldn't say personal to me, but closer to me maybe than it might at first appearance. But this is a disappearance that occurred not far from where I lived in Pennsylvania. I lived in Pennsylvania at the time. I was a teenager at the time when this occurred in 1985. I remember when it happened and continued to know about it and to this day, but that was like 40 years ago. But, I remember that time, and there have been, I don't know if we want to call them developments, but there's certainly been actions going on with her disappearance. It's still unsolved. And I will get into that before we are done tonight. And then when I'm ready to talk about the true crime part of this show tonight, when we get to that, I'm going to start with another unsolved disappearance, unfound disappearance being resolved. And that is the disappearance of Jesse Farber. And that is an episode that was featured on Unfound just a few years ago. We don't have to go way back to 2016, 2017 for that one. That is one that was covered just within the last couple of years. And so I'm going to tell you all everything that I know about it so far, which really isn't much than maybe some of you have read. I have not spoken to the guest from that episode yet. I did send her a text. She's not getting back to me. I do not take that personally. A lot of things going on. This is a very, very recent development. Of course, since the last live show, I'm sure there's a lot of emotions and things going on with her, but I will just tell you what I know, give you some analysis, and of course, as always, keeping my eye out for more developments as they become known. So as always, I promise anything that is in the title for this live show is guaranteed to get covered at some point over the next 2 hours. As always, I bring way more information, way more stories and things that I'd like to discuss should those three things not take up all the time, but I'm pretty sure that those three things will take up most of the time. Before I go any further, I want to remind all of you to give this live show a thumbs up. You know what to do. Many of you have tune in all the time, every Monday. And I know some of you also maybe listen to this the next day when it gets posted as a podcast. So if you are listening to this on your favorite podcast application, probably the same one you use to listen to the regular podcast. I guess we might call it Unfound Prime. Please give this a nice review, thumbs up, 5-star review on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever that may be. I would appreciate it for all those who are listening to this as a podcast the day after. You can support Unfound through a variety of ways. You can go to patreon.com/Unfound Podcast. You can go to paypal.me/Unfound Podcast. If you are watching on YouTube tonight, you can hit the join button. That gets you some things that other people don't get. And then if you are in the chat tonight, if your particular application gives it to you, shows it to you, you can hit the super chat button and contribute that way. Let's see who's in here very early on. And as I always tell people, it's very strange that the live show always has more viewers toward the end than at the beginning, which has to be one of the freakiest things in YouTube history. Hello, Charlie. What's going? Charles Flat Baby. You're going to have to explain that one to me, Charlie. Hello, D. How are you? Good to see you. I hope you're doing well. Mary, good to see you. Thank you. Glad I had a productive day. I'm going to tell you about that, Mary. Lives are always fantastic. I agree. Hello, the cake. Hello, Josie. Excited. Lisa. Man, seems like the Chiefs are always on Monday nights. What is the deal, Lisa, with that? What is the deal? Yeah, you're going to have to split one ear or eyeball on the game and one ear and eyeball on this live show, Lisa. Let's see if you can do that. And Jane, it's the first time she's ever made it. Man, I got a little bug going around my microphone here. That's weird. A little gnat or something flying around here. First time I made it to the live. Well, Jane, thank you for making time tonight. So excited for you. Thank you for letting me know about that. Hello, Derek. Good to see you. Tara, high school classmate Tara. Hello, how are you? She probably saw Cherrie in the title and probably caught your attention. Makes all the sense in the world. Thank you, Tara. I really appreciate you making some time tonight. And as of course you know, I posted a couple comments for your post a few days ago regarding Cherrie. I'm going to go over that and more when I get to it, but it will not be first on my agenda tonight. I've got some other things to discuss. Thank you, Lisa, because Ed is even better than the Chiefs most times. That's true. That is true. Lisa is one of the first persons out there to recognize that. She is very intelligent in that way. Hello, Maureen. What's going on with you? Amy, good to see you. Nice to see. Sounds good. All right, Tara. Thank you. Great. And I see you're watching from Facebook. Fantastic. So first I have to start off with I know this isn't going to be a shock, but there isn't going to be an episode this Friday. My brother Michael, Charlie's uncle, my brother, is flying into Orlando tomorrow evening. Brother Brian is picking him up. And then I think the plan is on Wednesday, we're going to be taking a little RV trip. And in, of course, the RV that I've talked about many times, of course, this is my brother Brian and his wife's second RV. The other one got trashed during the second hurricane last year. And I think the plan, I think, once again, I don't get to make the decisions on such things, but I think that we're going to try to make it down to Key West, I think. And I don't think that I've ever been to Key West. If I have, it had to have been, my mother, dad, and I came to Florida many times when I was a little kid driving down here. Did we ever make it out to Key West? I don't know. We certainly went to Disney. We certainly went to Cape Canaveral. I'm not sure if we took that long drive out to Key West. So I think this is going to be my first time out there. Of course, we've featured a disappearance out there in Marathon, which is a place that's out there that will pass. And of course, that was Jennifer Perry, disappearance that is now 32 years old. So because of that, I'm not necessarily taking this week off. Still, the Found episode and the Unfound Now episode are going to get done, given that this is the end of the month. But an actual official new episode will not be coming out this week, or a revisitation or anything. And I will record something probably tomorrow and put it on the feed so everybody knows what's going on and nobody is surprised. So I think this is just going to be the three brothers on this trip, and we'll see how that goes. This will be a first. So no, but most importantly for all of you, no episode this week. I'm working on some other things, but just not going to get it done this week. Also, what else is going on? And I will explain more when you get however you get Unfound, either through iTunes or Spotify, wherever it goes. I will post, like I said, a heads up for everybody that all of you will get, probably with a little more information than I'm revealing here. But just to remind everybody, I don't want everybody to get to 2 p.m. Eastern on Friday and it's like, well, what the heck's going on? I don't want to think there's any mess ups or anything like that. So there's that. Moving on, trivia. I'm with this new team now, and we're doing well. As I've said, really like playing with these people, just like I like playing with my old team as well. Just the easiest way to put it is we don't quite have the horsepower that the other team does, but we're making some very smart decisions, and we're in 6th place, really not that far out of 1st place, and we haven't even gotten a final question right. So I think that's really, really, really good. But they are going to have to do without me. I'm not going to be able to go to trivia, of course, because of this trip on Wednesday. But we actually moved from 8th place to 6th place, even though we didn't even put any points on the final question, which is nice. So we're doing okay there. I love playing with these people, just like playing in trivia in general. But, the thing about this team is that, it's a little bit of a challenge. If you're playing with the old team, when you finish like 1st, 2nd, 3rd all the time, maybe just take it for granted. And it's, this is a little bit more of a challenge. These people, of course, are not dumb or anything by any means. I mean, you have to remember, in 6th place, like 25 teams show up every week, and we're in 6th. So, it's pretty good. But it's just, it's just different. People with different kinds of knowledge. And I think that a little bit of my experience on, being with a team that won a lot and was competitive all the time, and some of that I think has helped. And so I'm excited about this. I don't know where we're going to end up, but it's been good. But that's the only trivia I've been playing. The other people that I played with, like the people that I started playing with this year, have kind of taken October off. And so maybe I'll be getting back together with them in November, maybe on Saturdays over at a place called Sharks. So that's what's going on with trivia. In fact, maybe I will even ask all of you, and no cheating, I will ask you the final question from this past. I can remember it from this past Wednesday. Here it is. What is the most popular apple in the United States? What is the most popular apple in the United States? It has 16% of the market for apples. Is it Fuji, Gala, Honeycrisp, or Red Delicious? What is the most popular apple in the United States? Fuji, Gala, Honeycrisp, or Red Delicious? Do not cheat. Put your answers in the comments. Let's see what everybody is saying here. Exotic says, new subscriber, been binge watching a lot of your podcasts. Well, I appreciate it, Exotic. Lots of podcasts. And of course, the episodes are, I think, a lot longer than the average true crime episode out there. So good luck to you. I hope you get a lot out of it. Of course, I hope you find them all informative. And you know how to contact me, unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. If any of those podcasts that you're going back through the whole way back to 2016 catch your ear, if you want to like make any comments or anything. Hello, the cake. This is Stephanie. No idea my shame is showing up like this. Yeah, YouTube has changed some things in the last few days. Something's gone on. In fact, I noticed it last night with the think tank as well. Some things, even I noticed on the app on my phone, it's changed a little bit. So Stephanie, I don't know. I think it's just an overall YouTube thing, not me. Charlie says, trip should be a great time. Yeah, Charlie, too bad you and the boys aren't here. Key West sounds like fun. Gonna find out, Mary. Lisa, have such a fun time. Well deserved. Thank you, Lisa. Friday's episode, Lisa says, Friday's episode was so sad. I didn't take the poll, but I think he disappeared very shortly after he dropped off and maybe lost to the river. Bodies of water swallow up a lot of people. That is true, Lisa. Yeah. Dana says, Red Delicious, Honeycrisp for Tara. Lisa says, unfortunately, probably Red Delicious. Exotic says, Gala. Maureen, Red Delicious. Joyce, Red Delicious. Hello, Joyce Rivatuzo. Look at you sneaking in here to the chat tonight. I see you, Joyce. D says Red Delicious. Derek says Honeycrisp. Amy, Red Delicious. Red Delicious. Fishing, hey all. Jacqueline also says Red Delicious. Well, that's quite a few answers, and thank you all for taking part. The answer I will give this so I don't leave all of you hanging here. Joyce says Honeycrisp is my favorite. Christina says Honeycrisp. Fishing says Granny Smith. That was not one of the answers, though, Fishing. Once again, it was Fuji, Gala, Honeycrisp, or Red Delicious. And the stat is that this apple has 16% of the market. The answer is Gala. Gala. That is the most popular apple in the United States by market share. 16% of the market. Now, it's not a very big, of course, there's so many different kinds of apples. No wonder that only has 16%. Gala. And the funny thing is, that's what we thought. We didn't have enough courage to put any points on it. But I think a lot of you said Red Delicious. I think a lot of teams answered that and got it wrong. So a lot of teams took zeros last week. Me, I was kind of up in the air. I don't buy apples. So there's that. So I think there was only one person that answered Gala, and that was Exotic. Good for you, Exotic. New subscriber and getting the trivia question right. You are having a good night, Exotic. Congratulations on that. So now you know. You can look that up. And once again, it was according to some, Apple Association or something like that. But Gala, in fact, when I went to Publix, my grocery store, I think it was on Friday, I actually made it a point to go over. And what are Gala apples again? Oh, Red Delicious. I think people pick that because it's the best looking apple. It's like your stereotypical apple, what everybody thinks an apple looks like. Not the most popular. Not the most popular. So there you go. And one more thing before I get into everything that I need to discuss tonight. My singing the last couple weeks is, in fact, I don't know if you can even tell in my voice. I did my singing practice the evening for an hour. And sang some tunes for about a half hour, and my voice is not strained at all. It may be a little gravelly, but it doesn't hurt anything. The past couple weeks have really seen some improvement in my technique. And I don't know, it's kind of a little bit of a breakthrough here in the last couple weeks. I had a fantastic lesson on Friday, but just within the, I don't know what it is. It's like I said, it seems like I hit a plateau, and now like I've kind of jumped up again where I can sing, I'm pitchy and some things, certainly not ready for public consumption, but I'm certainly singing the songs and trying to hit those high notes. Mainly it's the high note issue. And you're like, well, what like Tesla, Def Leppard, AC/DC, White Snake, groups like that. And I'm hitting the notes, like I said, a little pitchy, kind of get off key and everything, but voice does not hurt at all. So that is a big deal, which means I'm starting to use good technique. And of course, when you have good technique, if you get to that point, then anything is possible. So, really excited about that. In fact, what was it? Was it Friday night or was it Saturday? I was just hanging out here. I did my practice for an hour, and then all I did was sing songs for the next hour. So I devoted like 2 hours. Was it Friday evening or Saturday? And my voice was fine after the whole thing. I could, no soreness, nothing, and really challenging myself. So it's really nice. It's good. That is going better than my disc golf practicing, I'm here to tell you. So, it's been a lot of fun the last couple of weeks, really noticing, and being that I can do my practicing and singing and then still talk for the next 2 hours and my voice feels fine. You don't even know how great that is. You don't even know. I hope you're working on some Led Zeppelin. I have sung some Led Zeppelin song, although not the song that we've agreed upon, Lisa, but I'll be ready. I'll be ready when you're ready. I'll be ready. But I have sung a little Led Zeppelin, but not that song. Tara asked, do I still play the piano? I wouldn't say I practice it like I used to way back in the day, Tara, but I do have a Quai touch sensitive keyboard, like right off from where I'm sitting right here. It's like right there. Not cheap when as keyboards go. And I do play it, but really it's a lot having to do with my singing practice, more than actually trying to play any piano music per se. But it's a high-end touch-sensitive Quai keyboard, keyboard. It's not a acoustic piano, but it's touch-sensitive, meaning it's just like an acoustic piano. So many keyboards, they only have one volume, and you have to turn a knob or something to get the volume to go up. This is actually touch sensitive, just like a regular acoustic piano. And so I use it quite a bit when I'm working on my singing practice. But I wouldn't say any piano practicing, nothing but singing practice that I've been doing for a couple years, but really, I'm glad I finally actually got a one-on-one singing coach. Her name is Jacqueline Sarah, who is a fantastic singer. Sick, just completely sick singer. You can find her online, JACLYN, and then Sarah, SERRA, if you want to look her up. Completely sick singer. And she's a fantastic person. Love taking lessons from her. Fantastic. We do it online through Zoom. I need to practice, Lisa. Yeah, you better practice, Lisa. Exotic. I took up bass guitar at 52 years old after my husband passed away. Wow. That's when I started my singing practice, Exotic. The bass guitar, interesting. My buddy Brad plays bass. Hello, Dee Dee. What's going on? Good to see you. You've had that Superwoman or Wonder Woman picture like for years and years and years, right, Dee Dee? Right? Years and years and years. Nice. I'm glad you found something singing as a passion. It is, it is a passion, Tara, because my goal is to front a heavy metal or hard rock band here in the Tampa area. That's the goal. Still want to rock out. I can't help myself. Hello, Cranky. What's going on? Good to see you. All right, let's get to the true crime part of the show for the next hour and a half. Unfortunately, I have to start someplace very, very sad. It's one of those, what do we say? It's bittersweet. In which, on one hand, people are trying to find answers for their disappearances, but we know most of the time that those answers are sad answers. We've had some happy ones, I guess you could say. Brandon Roberts, Patrick Reed, Trevor very recently, of course, Trevor Nichols, who was found alive. Very happy stories, but most of them are sad, where the missing people are found deceased. Some of them have been murdered, and some people have gone to jail because of that. Some people suicide, like Devin Bond, very sadly, accidents or overdoses. And I'm here to tell you that the remains of Jesse Farber is a Pennsylvania disappearance, although really middle of Pennsylvania to eastern Pennsylvania disappearance. His remains were found. Actually, they were found back in July. And it was finally, of course, DNA. It's not like on TV where they do it, like get it done in a day. This takes months. And they were finally proven to be Jesse's within this past week, of course, since the last live show came out. Tara, awesome. I would love to see that. Thank you, Tara. Well, when I do that one of these days, if I end up being in a band, if I'm any good, maybe all of you will get some video. But with Jesse, I'll just read an article. I'm going to analyze it at least a little bit. But if you'll remember, this is a disappearance. Let me just look on my list here. How far does this go back? It's a little ways. What number disappearance was this in which it was featured on Unfound? I have to go back. Maybe it's this way. Maybe it's not that far back. I don't think. Where is it? I just forget after all these years how many disappearances. We've featured 380 disappearances. Where does the time go? Let me just bear with me for a moment. Let me see what disappearance this was. I'm going, some of these, here we go. It was disappearance 305. So like 2 years ago. And it was Rachel, girlfriend, mother of at least one child of his, who was the guest. She did a fantastic job, very energetic leader in trying to figure out what happened to Jesse. You might remember that there was some differences between Jesse's family and what Rachel was doing, and we tried to avoid that in the interview. But if you followed Jesse's, there's two different Facebook pages and people seemingly working separate from each other. And I would admit, after the episode came out, I got some emails that happen once in a while. But, and Rachel, I spoke to her, I don't know, 2 or 3 times since she appeared on Unfound, asking me for some opinions and insights and, well, let's just say a little venting. And I was supportive. I thought she was going about everything in the right way. And, it's just one of those things where, of course, I'm the disappearance expert. I think all of you, by listening on to Unfound, have gotten a lot more knowledgeable about disappearances. But you don't have to be a disappearance expert and make it your job to listen to that episode and pretty much decide probably most likely, if you're going to Vegas and putting money on such things, then most likely Jesse died out there in the woods for some reason by himself, no foul play or anything. And it does seem that that's what happened. And two, if you're maybe saying, well, I really don't remember this disappearance, this is the one where he called Rachel saying that there were coyotes or wolves after him, and they kind of had an idea where he was, and she and a guy, was it somebody in his family? I forget who that was, but they went to that area and couldn't find him, if that's ringing a bell to any of you. And so I'll just read this this article. There have been many articles that have written over the past week. I just picked this one. Authorities have recently discovered the remains of Tamaqua Man, who was reported as missing in 2015, state police at Frackville said. Jesse Lee Farber at the time went missing on August 11th, 2015. Authorities say he was last seen carrying a backpack while walking toward Tamaqua. This year, on or around July 13th, like I said, this is not what remains weren't found last week. They were actually discovered back in July. Around July 13th, a group of ATV riders in Walker Township reported they found human remains along the path they were riding on. The remains were analyzed and positively identified as those of Jesse, and his family members were notified. Police said they conducted further searches of the area and found additional remains. The Schuylkill County Coroner's Office and Northeast Search and Rescue Canine Team assisted. Police said an investigation into Farber's death is ongoing. Anyone with relevant information is asked to contact Trooper Seiler at 570-874-5300. Rachel Carroll, she is in the comments tonight, as you can see there, saying thank you, Ed, and everyone. You're very welcome, Rachel. Rachel Carroll, Farber's girlfriend at the time, said she last spoke to him by phone that night. He went missing for about 40 seconds. Farber pleaded for help, Carroll said. During the short call, Farber said coyotes were chasing him and that he was scared. He told her he was in the woods behind Tamaqua High School and that his cell phone battery was low. At that point, the signal went dead. And you remember we also, I did a map video for that, just trying to detail as best I could. Of course, I've never been to that area of Pennsylvania, even though I'm originally from Pennsylvania, but I'm from Western Pennsylvania. But I did my best with that. And of course, with Rachel's help, trying to understand exactly where she thought he was and where they went to look and the rest of that. Being that she's in there, she knows that she and I have not had a conversation. So as I stated early on, I don't know any more about what went on. Rachel, if you'd like to talk tomorrow or something, if you'd like to give me more information, totally fine. If you don't want to, that's fine too. It's fine. Whatever you want to do, fine. But what I think is notable here is that, despite all of the searches that were done, of course, with Rachel's help, police being involved, dogs and everything else, we find ourselves in a situation where, as it says in the article, Rachel, of course, knows if the article is absolutely true or not. I'm going to take for presentation purposes tonight to think that it is true that people on ATVs discovered him. And I guess what we're saying here is that despite all those searches and everything, he was in a place, his remains were in a place that really was not overtly hidden, unlike maybe like Noah Davis or Robbie Hurt and some others like that, where they were out in the woods and, or in the brush or something like that. And it actually took somebody kind of going off the beaten trail. Even in Robbie's Earth, they were like clearing brush from around traffic signs, and there his remains were. Noah Davis, kind of the same thing. This was not like that. Of course, if people are riding ATVs, this is on a trail. It's not like they're going out and, weaving around in the middle woods, weaving around trees or anything. I'm going to say that they are on an established trail. And I guess all the other ATV riders over the past 10 years missed the remains for whatever reason. And then these people came along and noticed the remains, of course, for whatever reason, and of course did the right thing and called the police. And there, of course, now this disappearance is somewhat resolved. I'm inclined to believe, unless Rachel tells me otherwise, that I'm inclined to believe that there was probably no foul play here. And it very well could be some sort of accident. If he was afraid and he was running from perceived coyotes or real coyotes, that it's possible that he was running in the woods, hit his head, and that's all it took. Very possible. But we might be open to some other ideas as well. And if nothing else, this should alert all of you, if you are an ATV rider, or you're a hiker or somebody like that. Me, I am not. I live in a city for reasons. I'm not much of a nature guy. I like steel and concrete. But for all of you who do like to go out in the woods, and I know many of you are very aware of disappearances in your areas, you should always keep your eyes peeled. Even if you think that the possibility is somewhat remote, my guess is that anybody who went out there and even knew about Jesse's disappearance, went out in this area hiking or ATV riding, probably like, well, people have gone out here and searched. What are the odds of me running across his remains, or him, or however you want to put it? But, kind of maybe puts people in kind of a negative mindset that they're not even trying. And so I really have to applaud these ATV people, however many there were, whoever they were, that they were, they were cognizant of that. They were keeping their eyes peeled, even if they necessarily weren't keeping their eyes peeled for human remains. But this is also, what have I said? What do I keep saying about disappearances, though? That most of them, when they get to the unfound category, meaning they get to be a year old and that thus become eligible to be featured on the podcast, how many of these end up getting solved by luck? Many. Not all of them. Zoe Campus's murder, kind of a little bit lucky, but at least there was like investigation A to B to C, and then going and finding her buried in the backyard. Andrea Bowman, I guess they kind of got lucky that Dennis Bowman had murdered another woman, which then they figured that out and were able to go on his property, then find Andrea there. But how many of these, whether it's Crystal Morrison or Esther Westenbarger, Noah Davis, Robbie Hurt, on and on and on, how many of these are just people going about their daily lives, whether it's with work or pleasure like ATV riding, and they happen upon remains? It happens way, way more than searches or, logical, what we would call logical investigations. Very, very important to remember. Now, what, if Rachel's in here once again, Rachel, you don't have to put anything in this chat. You don't have to do that. If you just want to have a private conversation with me, totally fine. What would be interesting for me to know that's not clear in anything that I've read yet was where his remains were found, were they close to the search areas? When Rachel, of course, would know that more about that than I would as far as the areas that were searched. Was it in one of the search areas? Was it far from one of the search areas? This would be very interesting to me because I keep track of some, such things. And it's very important to me when I am giving advice to others, whether people who've already been on the podcast and I talk to them once in a while, or people who are going to be on the podcast in the future. If, they were in this, as everybody can see there, Rachel saying, yes, they were in the search areas. Okay. Then, it seems then that everybody had a really, really good handle on this disappearance. But, Rachel, what I would say to you is it's not unusual for searches to be done and not be successful. And then years later, remains are found in that area. It's very, very common, very, very common. So, don't be surprised by that. Lisa, the latest is 1 month ago, investigators scour Smithville Lake in connection with years-long missing persons investigation. Go back a little bit. Lisa, I do love the hike. There's a missing person in my little town, Smithville, Missouri, Ryan Weeks, since February 2020. I think I've heard of this. I could send you his sister's info if you're interested. I'm always interested, Lisa. She's done interviews in the news. Yeah, if you have contact information, send it to me. So, and I think I've heard of that. The name sounds familiar to me. But this sounds very much like just Chance Engelbert's, which of course, I just talked about that within the past month. He walked off and all miffed at how his in-laws were treating him, giving him a hard time about how he'd quit jobs or switch jobs or something like that. And he said he was going to walk from Nebraska back to Wyoming. And just recently, his remains were found once again by accident. I think the big difference, though, here would be Rachel saying this was, Jesse's remains were found, where they kind of thought he was last. Whereas Chance, not as clear, at least at this point. And I've not spoken to anybody. I had his mother's the guest. I've not spoken to her. So my perception is he was found in an area that wasn't searched. It very well may be that I find out that I'm wrong about that. But either way, both Jesse and Chance's remains were found by luck. And this is, hello, Rodney. What's going on? Good evening from Seminole, Florida. Good to see you, Rodney. How are you? Good to see you. But that's really all I can really say about Jesse's disappearance. Rachel, if you want to, I really don't have, if you want to text me or email me, if you're available sometime tomorrow, I can give you a call. And once again, anything we discuss, of course, would be off the record unless you give me permission to tell the audience a little bit more the next time I do one of these live shows. Totally up to you. But you can just text me or email me if there's a better time. Tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, be a little difficult because I'll be on this trip. But if you just want to do it this coming weekend, that's fine too. It's up to you. So Jesse Farber, his remains have been found. I'm guessing they'll, try to determine if a cause of death can be determined. Possible, it just depends. We know that in many situations like this, a cause of death is not determined. Will one be determined for Chance Engelbert? Who knows? Will one be determined scientifically for Robbie Hurt? Of course, we kind of suspected it had to do with drugs in that one. Crystal Morrison, nothing definitive except to say that she was sick that day and it was like 100 degrees. She could have easily gotten heat stroke, but never know exactly what killed her. But her family seems to pretty much believe it wasn't foul play. So we just have to remember that unlike, in contrast to, for example, Janelle Matthews, whose remains were in the ground for 30 some years, and they were quickly able to determine how she died because there was a bullet hole in her head. You couldn't miss that. So, there you go. Cranky heard that it's possible family member moved Chance's body due to its close proximity to something that could have given someone away. I don't know, Cranky. People, the thing is, people say a lot of things. Really, they're going to, heard it's possible a family member moved Chance's body due to its close. I think if I can compare and contrast between my perception of Jesse's and Chance's disappearances, with Chance's, certainly his mother, his side of the family wanted to believe that the in-laws did something to Chance, that somehow they tracked him down when he was trying to walk away, or he walked back and something happened because they were already arguing. So it doesn't surprise me that something like that would pop up. Whereas with Jesse, once again, the way I remember my interview with Rachel, of course, you never can really rule out anything, I guess, until remains are found. But this did, to me, seem something that was more likely going to end up, or will end up, a situation where there was no foul play and it was just misadventure, an accident, or something like that. It very well may be when they look at, analyzing Jesse's remains farther, he may have, damage to his remains that could lead to foul play ideas. But I'm thinking probably the same thing happened in both. That's my insight. Rachel says, we are searching tomorrow again, but I will reach out and we can talk about it. Thank you so much for everything, Ed. You're very welcome, Rachel. I know that you've, this has not been easy for you for so many different reasons. And I just think you're shown a lot of courage over the last 10 years. And because we know that there have been some that kind of been working against you, and you continue to do all the right things. And I give you a lot of credit for that. I know it hasn't been easy. And whatever they do end up determining as the reason for Jesse's death, I know it's very bittersweet, but this is why we're all here. We realize most of the time, if these get resolved, probably the person is deceased. And, I think family members try to prepare themselves for that. It can be very difficult when that finality, actually comes, no matter how, if it's a 10-year-old disappearance or a 1-year-old disappearance or a 40-year-old disappearance, nothing really prepares anybody for that time when the resolution comes. So, Rachel, thanks for joining us tonight. I did not expect that, but thank you. And once again, tomorrow or this coming weekend, it seems like you're busy tomorrow, but this coming weekend, fine. That's fine. If you'd like to talk, I'm here. All right. And once again, if you have not listened to Jesse's episode, please go back and find that one, and you can decide for yourselves what think might have happened, and then you can compare his remains being found to the interview that Rachel did with me. Like I said, I'm guessing it was about 2 years ago. Let's talk about Cherrie Mahan. This is a disappearance that happened in February of 1985, about 20, 25 minutes from where I lived in Pennsylvania at the time. This is a disappearance that I think is fairly known, not as well known as Brian Schaefer, Mara Murray, Jennifer Kessie, but pretty well known. Mainly to remind all of you, this is the disappearance that had allegedly to do with a van with a skier on the side, and it was seen in the area at the time. And although it's not been featured as an episode on the podcast, I know that I've talked about Cherrie's disappearance maybe 3 times on this live show. And it very well may be just because, it was kind of right down the street from where I grew up in Pennsylvania, and I remember it. And I remember everything that went on at the time. I would have been 14. I would have been in 8th grade. But we have some things going on here, and I feel compelled to comment. So a police dig at a private property in southwest Armstrong County this week, so this is like last week, was connected to the 40-year search for Cherrie Mahan, who went missing in 1985 when she was 8 years old. It wasn't clear what led investigators from the state police, Pennsylvania State Police, and FBI to the rural area in South Buffalo, it's a township, on Tuesday, not Buffalo in New York. Nor was it clear if anything of interest was found. Cherrie disappeared on February 22nd of 1985, shortly after 4 p.m. as she got off the bus on her way home from school. She vanished somewhere between the bus stop and her family's Cabot home. Cabot is a town on Cordon Planter Road, about 100 yards away. And if you'd like a video of that area, one of the first videos I think I ever put on the Unfound YouTube channel that I'm broadcasting on right now was that. That would have been the summer of 2017. And it was the first trip I ever made back to Pennsylvania with the car that I have now. That's how, because I got the car in the summer of 2017. And after that, I drove to Pennsylvania. So the car would have had 30-some thousand miles on it time, and now it's like 126. But that was the first trip I made to Pennsylvania in that car. That's how long ago it was. But you can see that I actually go to the spot where the bus stopped, and I do a little video of all of that. Just find it on the channel. And that's not that far from where my parents ended up moving, where my dad lives now. So despite decades of searches and advocacy by Cherrie's mother, Janice McKinney, no trace of the girl has been found. Tuesday was not the first time investigators searched the South Buffalo area near the Allegheny River. KDKA, which is Channel 2 major station in Pittsburgh, reported. And they will likely return because of the size of the area of interest. The spot is about 10 miles from where Cherrie disappeared. The TV station also reported that investigators have several persons of interest who are actively being investigated. I'm going to come back to that. Earlier this year, an Iowa-based private investigator, Steve Ridge, does his name sound familiar? It should. He's poked his nose into Jody Huizentroot's disappearance as well. He took on the case and announced a $100,000 reward for information that helps lead to the missing girl. What have I said? Never take anybody seriously who puts up rewards. Never. Ever. Never, ever, ever, never, ever, never, ever. They don't know what they're doing. I wanted to recover and positively identify her remains, Steve Ridge told KDK back in May. Knowing that he thinks we already know to some degree who was involved or has significant knowledge regarding this case. This is the exact same wording that he uses for Jody's disappearance. Exact same. Now, to remind you, Jody went missing in Iowa. Cherrie is missing in Pennsylvania. They're both still missing. Both still unsolved. And certainly I could believe in both of them there was foul play. Steve, is one disappearance, unsolved disappearance, not enough? Ms. McKinney, too, has indicated in interviews and on social media that she believes she knows who took her daughter decades ago. She and a group called Cherrie's Angels have continued search efforts on their own, and they recently crowdsourced volunteers with trained cadaver dogs. The group, which runs the Facebook page called Find Cherrie Mahan, wrote on last Wednesday, that the area of South Buffalo searched by law enforcement this week is not the same area where their volunteer cadaver dogs searched late last month. The group works directly with Miss McKinney, and they've long lobbied police to search specific areas about which they've received tips. Both areas remain significant for different reasons, and one does not discredit the other. Based on what we've learned, there may be multiple sites of interest connected to the same individuals or patterns of activity. And there was an article written back in May. So back in May, private investigator, this is Steve Ridge, claims a blue backpack carried by Cherrie at the time of her disappearance could be key to cracking the case. He believed it was submerged in a pond near her grandmother's house in Clinton. Look that up on the map. And he's the one who put up the $100,000 reward for information leading the location of positive information of her remains. So here's the way I see it. First of all, they did some digging. I know where they were digging. I know the address. It's public, but I'm not saying it here. And I did look up as best I could to see who owns the property. The problem is that mostly, unless you actually go, what you learn real quickly about looking for records like this online is, for the most part, the records start to peter out like in the 90s. So when you want to go back to 1985 to actually own this piece of property that's right along the Allegheny River in 1985, you can't easily or readily do it online. To do that, you'd actually have to go to whatever office they call it in Armstrong County or even Butler County maybe, or the township or something, and go for those records to actually figure that out. It's just some point the internet can't help you. All right, we have to remember that. But I know what it is. I looked up the current owner, and it's pretty clear to me that the owner who owns the property, and there's a building on the property now, is not the person who owned the property back in 1985. That's about all I can say for sure. But they're digging. So you have to keep in mind, they're digging on a property that is right next to the Allegheny River. And what I mean by that is the property actually has a dock on the river if you want a boat. So it's not like close to the Allegheny River. It's on the river. It's like me and the Gulf of whatever you want to call it right up here. I don't live across the street from the Gulf. I'm right on the Gulf. It's right there. There are no other buildings or anything between me and the water. I know. Some of you already know that. But that's what I mean. So I have a really, really good question. If the river's right there, why dig a hole at all? If somebody took Cherrie for whatever reason, connected to her, a stranger abduction, whatever, and killed her, why bother digging a hole at all? The river is right there. You go down 3 a.m. I know this is what we do here, so I just have to be blunt about this, but this is what we do. Throw her dead body into the river. And even if she is found, the river is going to totally destroy. Of course, this is in 1985 terms, so DNA wasn't quite a thing yet. But throwing her in the Allegheny River would destroy probably any traces of DNA or anything else. It would also disconnect the killer or killers from her. Whereas we've learned with like Zoe Campos and Andrea Bowman, who I just mentioned some minutes ago, what ultimately got Carlos Rodriguez and Dennis Bowman respectively in trouble for both of those? The remains being found on their properties. Whereas if Carlos Rodriguez had taken Zoe Campos and thrown her in a trash receptacle somewhere, at least she's not on his property. And likewise with Dennis Bowman, he killed his daughter. She's found in the backyard. You know, there's many different ways you can get rid of a body. Now, we know why people put remains in their backyards, because they figure, well, I have control of this area. They're going to need a warrant to go onto the property, on and on and on and on. And that works. As long as you own the property, it works. The big difference, though, is Carlos Rodriguez and Dennis Bowman didn't live next to a river. And I'm pretty sure if they had, that's where Zoe Campos and Andrea Bowman would have gone, into the river. Pretty sure. So you're telling me that somebody was there, I guess, late at night, you know, with shovels. They surely didn't bring in a backhoe or anything to do this. Digging shovel, digging, all the while the water's just blowing right by there. Now, granted, the Allegheny River is not the Mississippi, but the Allegheny River is a considerable river. It starts way up there in northern Pennsylvania, maybe even to New York, and winds its way the whole way down to Pittsburgh, where it merges with the Monongahela to form the Ohio River. I grew up on the Allegheny River, been on it many times back in the day. It really challenges. Of course, we know that people make all sorts of crazy decisions when it comes to disappearances. But I think what we also learned is people do things in matters of convenience. Like I just said, Carlos Rodriguez put Zoe Campos in his backyard because it was convenient. And remember, it's believed, of course, it's known now, he killed Zoe Campos on that property. She came over there. They were doing whatever. He probably tried to rape her. He killed her, put her in the backyard. Now, Andrea Bowman, it's hard for me to remember. I don't think she was actually killed in that house, but that's where her family ended up living, and she was in the backyard buried. Convenience. It seems mighty inconvenient for me to believe. It seems mighty inconvenient to dig a hole when you have the perfect receptacle right there. And let's admit it, the odds of, as we know, how many disappearances has Unfound covered where we believe people went into the river? Shane Feld, Jake Lachelet, Ben Archer, just to name a few. Maybe most recently, Chuck Jones. People go into the river, never found. So I don't know what they're doing. I would also say, and Tara, if I may say, Tara was there with her husband that day when I was doing that filming, because coincidentally, Tara's husband, if you're seeing Tara in the comments here while I'm doing the show tonight, Tara's husband, way back when, was on the same bus with Cherrie that day. How's that? How's that for something? And I got to talk to him that day. It seems like yesterday, Tara. And he got to tell me what, of course, it's been years and years and years. At that point, it had been 32 years. And so I, get some things wrong, don't remember things, totally understandable. But he knew the area. Like I said, I'm from that area. Tara went to Leechburg High School just like I did. And so what are we talking about here? And as I told Tara, Tara had posted something on her private Facebook page a few days ago. I'm under the impression that if this were something, this disappearance would have been solved a long time ago. The problem that you have a lot of times with these disappearances that are this old, we see this a lot in disappearances, is that, especially when it gets to disappearances that are this old, when we start to get to that 20, 30, 40-year time, people come in and it's like they're trying to reinvent the wheel. This is also a sign that I know that people don't know what they're doing. This is also another sign. It's obvious to me that people who know about Cherrie's disappearance would not be doing stuff, because they'd be thinking like I do, that if it was really this straightforward, this would have been solved by now. It would have been. It's it would be pretty straightforward. If this backpack was anything, I mean, what do the people getting involved think? That the state police in Pennsylvania are idiots? I mean, I have as much criticism for police overall as anybody. But I also believe that, especially when it comes to children, maybe not so much with adults, but with children, they actually are trying, I think, to solve these cases. But a lot of them, it's very difficult. I mean, they put all the flyers out there about the van, and it was on milk cartons. It was all over the place, on and on and on. But people come in like a Steve Ridge, and this, like I said, a lot of disappearances have this, and they come in and they act like they're doing all this new, look at us, look what we're doing. Yeah. This has been done. If this were something, it would have turned up something years ago. I think there's a gas, like I just like, seriously, like Ashley Degree, I don't know that disappearance well enough to comment on it, I think. But this is, I'll give you a better example of a disappearance that all of us know, and that's Brian Schaefer. It's the person who comes along out of nowhere and says, hey, do you know if the walls inside the ugly tuna have ever been searched? That kind of person. That person. Or the person that comes along for Mara Murray and says, has that bus driver ever been investigated? People like that. People like that. This is what this, and they act like, they're saying something like monumental. Like I said, I realize this sucks. It sucks that I have to be like this. But, when it comes, I'll keep saying it again. People who come in and offer rewards don't know what they're doing. Rewards don't solve disappearances. As I just stated with Jesse Farber's, luck solves disappearances way, way more. It's like 1,000,000,000 to 1. That's an exaggeration of luck versus rewards. Luck solves thousands of rewards or thousands of disappearances. Rewards, off the top of my head, I'm not going to say it's never happened. But being that I can't off the top of my head name a disappearance that was solved due to rewards should tell you something. I'm not saying it's never happened. But there is not one disappearance that Unfound has covered that has been solved. Whether it's Jesse Farber's or Devin Bond's or Zoe Campus's, when you have like 10% of the disappearances that have been featured have been solved to one degree. Not one of them has been solved due to a reward. 0. And so when somebody comes forward with like $100,000 and I'm like, what, 99,999 wasn't enough. If it's not going to make somebody come forward at 50,000, then what are we talking about here? This is the way you have to look at it. This is what the stats say. Moving on. What do I have? First rule of disappearances. If you take nothing else from this show tonight, first rule of disappearances: people who announce rewards don't know what they're doing. Now, I can excuse like the average person who doesn't know that. You know, maybe we think like with Julie Weflin going missing, maybe back in the 1980s, and the Bonneville. I don't even know if that happened or not. I don't remember. But if her work, the Bonneville Power Authority wanted to put up $5,000 reward or something, like, I'm not going to get crazy about that because they don't know. Okay, they don't know. If people, just general friends of the missing person, want to raise some money for a reward or start a GoFundMe, I'm not going to get crazy about that either, once again, because they're not investigators. They don't ever expect to get involved in something like this. But when police do it, when private investigators do it, you know, and other people do it, who act like they know something about disappearances, they present themselves as that. That's what drives me nuts. Cranky says, what does it mean when law enforcement adds to reward? Well, it's hard to say, Cranky. It very well may be. There just may be some private donor. The only thing that comes from rewards are kooks. And, they may think that by doing this, this gets back in the news. What? A little girl missing isn't enough. It's not enough to just say Cherrie Mahan is missing to get coverage in Western Pennsylvania. I think it is. So even when they offer the reward, I think it's quite cynical. I think they know it's not going to work. They just use it as a media ploy. But what it does, it causes all of the kooks and the palm readers and the numerologists and everybody else to come out of the woodwork and guessing at it, hoping they can collect the $100,000. That's what happens. That's what happens. This is why I do not support it. I've told every guest that I've ever had, don't do rewards. Now, some of them already have it out there. They're going to do what they're going to do. But I tell them, don't hire private investigators. Don't pay them. And don't do rewards and everything else. I see, so sad. It's just, Terry, it's just the business they do. It's just the way it is. Moving on. I want to talk about this letter. And let's see if I can find it on this computer. Let's hope I can find it, everybody, at moment's notice. Where is it? Where is the letter? Here it is, right here. There was a letter sent in 2018. Kara, I'm sure you know about it. In 2018. Now, what is significant about the year 2018 is that is the year that Cherrie's mother's husband died. Now, they were a couple at the time of Cherrie's disappearance, and you should know, Cherrie's mother has never revealed the identity of Cherrie's father. Never. She claims, I'm not saying she's lying. I'm perfectly willing to believe her. She's saying that she was raped when she was 15 or 16, and that's how she conceived Cherrie. But at least publicly, she has never revealed that guy's identity. However, it does seem that the police know who he is. I do not. All right. And I don't even know if you were to go and be able to get the birth certificate for Cherrie, if his name would even be on it. Probably not. Probably not. So you have to keep that in mind. So through all of these years, all of the interviews that her mother has done, all of the allegations aimed at Cherrie's father, the father has never been named. And, if somebody wants to send me, if anybody knows his name, For sure, for sure, for sure. If you know it for sure, don't post it in the comments. Email to me at unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. I will not make it public, but I would like to know it. So you have to remember that before I read this letter. Now, this letter came to Cherrie's mom in 2018. Her husband, that's where she gets the last name McKinney. And by the way, the last name Mahan, Cherrie Mahan, that is actually Cherrie's mother's maiden name, if you didn't know. So in the same year that Cherrie's husband died, not the father of Cherrie, she gets this letter. Some of it is blocked out, so I'll have to skip over these parts. It says, to Cherrie's mom, facts. Cherrie was killed by blank of Katanning, which is a nearby city from Leechburg, Freeport, all this area, all where I grew up. Katanning RD3, Walk Chalk Road. I've been on, when I worked for PennDOT, I was on Walk Chalk Road way back in the early 90s. The police searched this property. Blank put a bag over her head, Cherrie's head, and she suffocated her. Their son dug her grave. He was innocent at the time, for he believed he was digging a latrine. They do have public water in Katanning and elsewhere. I don't know what this is. This was on the property of blank. It's in the letter, but I can't read it. It's redacted. He was a distant relative. Distant is spelled wrong. Of the blank. This was blank. It is along the river between Tarrytown and Reesdale near the Lockgate Dam. Seemingly, this is the property where they are digging now. Motive, Cherrie's father, once again, who is unknown, at least to the public, didn't want her, and he didn't want to pay for her. He plotted with his Quaker cult friends. Is he a Quaker? I have no idea because I don't know who he is. He plotted with his Quaker cult friends to make her disappear. The blank took the case. I don't know what that means. The friends are guilty of many crimes that are unpunished, that go unpunished. I pray you find some peace after you find her body. And it's signed Pastor Justice. Now keep in mind, this was a letter that was sent to Cherrie's mother 33 years after Cherrie went missing. I have no idea if Cherrie ever received a letter like this before this, if anybody actually gave her kind of a similar story about the father of Cherrie. I have no idea. All I know is this letter was sent in 2018, seemingly after Cherrie's mother's husband died. This all happened around the same time. My inclination is to believe this is all crap. As many of you know, once again, if you know disappearances, you know that people writing letters and making calls and doing all sorts of these things, very, very common. And you know what brings out people like this Pastor Justice? Rewards. Now, if you ask me, when I read this letter, and you also have to remember, maybe before I get into this, you also have to understand this. And what we do here with disappearances, people are more who know nothing about a disappearance, are more than happy to point the finger at somebody they hate to implicate them in a disappearance. Even though they don't know anything about the disappearance, they don't know where this enemy of theirs was that the day or night that the disappearance occurred, nothing. But they're more than happy to cause problems for somebody they hate. Happens all the time. In fact, it mostly happens in drug disappearances. We might think of a disappearance like Billy Cook's. Is that his name? From West Virginia. Where people were it's still unsolved, continue to point fingers all over the place about what happened to him. They're more than happy to cause problems for people they hate, even though they really don't know if those people, that group, that gang, those rival drug dealers or whatever else caused the disappearance. But they're more than happy to point the police in that direction. These people are more than happy to send law enforcement all over the countryside, like chickens with their heads cut off, running around. More than happy. Now, if you ask me, what do I think is now, of course, this was 7 years ago that this letter was presented. Still unsolved. Still unsolved. If you ask me, I don't think this Pastor Justice knows a dang thing about this disappearance. Once again, I'm not saying it's never happened. Hello, Rockford. Good to see you tonight. I'm not saying it's never happened that one of these letters didn't happen to be true, but it is so unlikely. It is so unlikely. I can't even begin to explain it. What it sounds more like to me, Pastor Justice probably is some fundamentalist Christian who hates Quakers. And it very well may be that somehow he knows who this father is and just wants to get a bunch of Quakers in trouble. When they say Quaker cult, the Quakers are not a cult. This sounds personal. When you put Quaker cult friends, the Quakers are not a cult. Jim Jones was a cult. Jim Jones was a cult. That, that thing from some years ago where some of those actresses got in with that guy who said he was a sex god and everything, that was a cult. The people who killed themselves and thought they were going to get beamed up to that comet that was passing Earth back in like 1999, Rockford, that's down in your area of the country. That's a cult. The Quakers are not a cult. And that somebody would term them as such should tell you everything that you know. They are an established cultural religion who have a particular belief about humans. And you're not brainwashed. You're free to leave whenever you want. They don't control people. Do I agree with their teachings or anything? Not necessarily. The Quakers, of course, were one of the foundations starting of the United States. They are popular in Pennsylvania, just like the Amish, Mennonites, etc. If you didn't know, former President Richard Nixon, he was a Quaker. It's not a cult. That should tell you everything you know about this. I think that this is just what I would call not a regular Christian person, but some kooky Christian person that just wants to get another religion or denomination, of culture in trouble. And that's common. Like I said, it's common for people who hate others to do things like this. Now, why they waited 30, if you really knew something about this, why are you waiting to 2018 to write it? That makes you the bad person, that makes you a bad person too. By waiting all these years. Rockford, once again, hello. When I hear Quaker cult friends, I automatically duck credibility points. Absolutely. I think says, got to say, Julie Weflin's case reminds me of that. I think says, I forgot name of the guy who was suspected by many. Will Parks, I think. Just shows you. Will Parks. Of course, John Polos, who knows the disappearance the best, still suspects him. Love John, but disagree with him. So that was a letter that Cherrie's mother got back in 2018. To my knowledge, they've never been able to place it. They don't know who wrote it. I don't know anything about was it mailed? Was it just anonymously dropped off at where she was living? What the postmark was? I know nothing about anything. All I'm doing is looking at a picture that was posted online that I downloaded. So there's that. what continues, going back to Cherrie's mother, never telling the public who Cherrie's father is. And of course, once again, she says that she was raped by this guy. Once again, I'm not doubting her. It's just weird to me that she would not reveal the name to the public. As Tara knows, being from that area, I think still living in that area, Tara, of course, I haven't lived there since 1998, but there have been a lot. I know the Trib and the Post-Gazette over the years have done many, many, many stories about Cherrie's disappearance. And she has done a lot to try to get the word out about us so people don't forget about Cherrie. I think that's all fantastic. But you would think when you're asking for the public's help, if you know anything, come forward. Well, the public can't help you if it doesn't know who you suspect. Now, it's pretty clear to me that Cherrie's mother, as most, when we have custody issues and children go missing and stuff like that, it makes all the sense in the world. I'm not saying she's right. I'm not saying she's wrong, but it's very common when things like this happen and parents are divorced and the child goes missing, that one parent points the finger at the other. We had that being, if Dee's still in here, we have that with the Sebastian case. The autistic boy who went missing, still missing. And there's been a lot of back and forth between his mother and father, who were divorced or maybe never married, I don't know, and blaming each other. So for Cherrie's mother to say, to suspect him, it may not be true, makes all the sense in the world, though. But if she really wants the public's help, it would help if we know who this guy was. And I realize that, it very well may be that she's keeping, except for the police, she's keeping his identity secret because she's claimed that he raped her, and that's how Cherrie came to be. I don't know. But what if we were to find out this guy's name, and then somebody who knows him or who doesn't know that he's Cherrie's father would say, well, yeah, I know John Smith. Well, now that I think about it, he did this back in this year. That nobody can do that because we don't know who Cherrie's father is. This is why I always counsel that my guests say as much as they can. You never slander anybody. I will not let people do that on my podcast. Make all sorts of accusations and everything. It's the very reason I don't do these interviews live, because you never know what somebody's going to say. But if it's factual that whoever it is her father, that's not slander. Now, if he didn't rape her, then that is slander, and that could be trouble. But if he's her father, there's no slander regarding that. And if there's documented scientific evidence that he's his, you can say that. It just, on one hand, I think people believe that she's doing everything in her power to find out what happened to her daughter. But on the other hand, she's not saying who the father is. Because there are people besides the police who might be able to help. But they can't help if they don't know who the father is. What do I think? I think anytime you have a couple who's not together, and if it was a situation where there was child support or whatever else, and the guy was miffed off about it, and yeah, Yeah, happens all the time. It's very sad. To the point where you get into situations where they have some sort of custody arrangement and the woman takes the child for the custody exchange. And what's the guy end up doing? Killing both of them. This stuff, it's bad. It's as tense as anything can happen between adults when you get into custody issues and children issues and um, child support and all of the nasty things that I've heard. Of course, I don't have any kids, so I've never had to think about this. But things that get said in divorce court and all sorts of allegations, people will say anything to get custody of their kids. And there's a lot of bitterness. I thought we were going to be together forever, and now we're in divorce court, and you ruined my life, yada, yada, yada. Yeah, so I wonder why I'm not married and still single. But so it would make all the sense in the world for her to name this guy, and nobody would think otherwise of it. Certainly wouldn't be illegal or moral or unethical, but she hasn't. What I'm saying is it makes perfect sense that he could have done something. I mean, as I'm reading in that missing persons book, you start talking about parents of missing kids. Parents have a lot to do with it. That's just the way it is. Why? If nothing else, it's because the parents are mostly around the kids, if for no other reason. It's that. But then you get to, well, maybe the one of the parents slaps the kid or breaks the arm, and man, they're gonna have to take the doctor. Doctor's gonna realize there was some sort of abuse going on here, and and they say, well, I'm not going through that, so I'm just gonna have to kill this kid. That happens. So what do I think? Tara, I know you, maybe you've not heard, what I've had to say about this, and it's fairly controversial. It's fairly, I wouldn't say on the fringe, but after 9 years of doing disappearances and knowing how many things people get wrong, eyewitnesses and ear witnesses and family members, how many things they get wrong, I have to admit, I'm not even sure this van exists. All that was said, I realize what, your husband said and everything else, but I still come back to, it's such a unique vehicle, never seen before, never seen after, despite all these rumors that it was seen here, was seen there. It's all nothing but rumors. There's something about all of that after 9 years and 380 some disappearances. There's something within all of that that isn't clear. And we run into this. This is very common. That you think you understand a disappearance, and then it gets resolved. And it's like, wow, what we thought, this thing wasn't factual at all. And it usually has to do with eyewitness testimony. Usually. People seeing a missing person somewhere, seeing a particular vehicle, seeing this thing, that thing, this. And once again, I'm not saying anybody is lying in Cherrie's case or anything else, but I will continue to say the way all of these facts stack up between this digging and this backpack and the van, everything, this should have been solved years ago if it's all true. Because we have to remember, most child disappearances are not like this. They're more like nobody's seeing anything. But we have This was new information. I feel bad. He was positive. I'm not, once again, I'm not here to call anybody liars or anything. And surely when eyewitnesses get involved, most of them are not on purpose lying. There are certainly witnesses out there who lie for whatever crazy reason. But no different, and I was gonna mention this before I signed off tonight, to check out this podcast, Devil Town. I talked about Kelly Wilson's disappearance. I listened to the podcast. I don't have time to get into it, but you talk about a bunch of people who claim they saw things and didn't. Listen to that podcast that was done about 3 years ago regarding the still unsolved disappearance of Kelly Wilson, where people claim they saw people being murdered and being sacrificed in the woods. None of it happened. And a bunch of people almost went to jail because of it. So this is really where I am. I still continue to be Cherrie Mahan, with Cherrie Mahan. I'm still open to a multitude of ideas. And have you ruled out her mother and the mother's husband? No, I haven't. I'm not here to speak ill of them, but you can't rule them out. There are no facts to rule them out except just their word. And just thinking, well, a mother wouldn't do that. The problem is mothers do that. Could the father, whoever the father is of Cherrie, arranged it, picked her up, abducted her? Absolutely. Could a stranger have done it? Absolutely. Could one of her teachers have done it, followed the school bus and picked her up? Absolutely. But all I'm saying here tonight is that the way it's trying to be portrayed by Steve Ridge, other people, all of these things out there, if it was really this straightforward, it would have been solved years ago. There was a concerted effort to try to solve this, unlike when adults go missing. When 8-year-olds go missing, they want to get these disappearances solved, especially if it's not considered to be a runaway. When a girl gets off at a bus and doesn't make it home, they put a lot of effort to it. I just can't see them missing all this stuff that would have been obvious back then. So it has to be something else. It's something that's just not as clear. So this is where I am. And on top of everything else, you have to remember, there have been all sorts of digging and searching and all sorts of promises made on Cherrie's disappearance for years. This is the year. This is the year. This is year. And it wasn't the year. And given that I know the Steve Ridge guy from the Jody Husentruth, and it's a disappearance, I have to admit, I probably know Jody's disappearance better than I know Cherrie's, if that's even believable, even though I grew up in the area where Cherrie went missing. What can I say? The people who have worked daily on Jody's disappearance and run the website and everything else, they just do not take Steve Ridge seriously. So I cannot help but to not take him seriously regarding Cherrie's disappearance either. And if you look up, he's a former news director somewhere. But he's not the only. There are people who have come before him. It's just they keep doing the same things over and over and over. It's still unsolved. So that's where I am on this. I very well could end up being wrong, but Jesse Farber's disappearance is another one that I got right. Like I said, my prediction rate regarding resolutions for disappearances continues to go up. It's well into the 90-some percentile. With some 90%, some accuracy, I can predict what happened. Just again, this work I do. And I can't expect everybody to be like that. With Cherrie's, I could certainly believe it's foul play, but it's just not as clear as there's a lot of confirmation bias. They see what they want to in that letter. They see this, they see that. Throwing money around and everything else, it doesn't work. And just to remind everybody, this is not a disappearance that has been featured on the podcast. And maybe we'll one of these days, probably not. But so don't go looking for it in the podcast feed. That's something you're going to have to go find on your own. There have been many shows, YouTube channels, podcasts done on Cherrie's disappearance. All right, let's get to Lars Mittank, even though I only have 20 minutes. But this is the guy. I'll just get right into it right now. I wanted to talk about it. Made the promise. On July 6th of 2014, the day before they were supposed to return home, Mittank and his companions were at a bar in town, and Mittank got into a disagreement with some other German nationals over football. Mittank, a fan of the football club SV Werder Bremen, had differences with fans of FC Bayern Munich. He then parted from his friends outside a restaurant after leaving the bar and disappeared for the rest of the night. Mittank turned up at the resort the following morning and told his friends he was beaten up by four men who were hired by the group in the bar, whom he disagreed with the night before. The fight resulted in Mittank suffering an injured jaw and a ruptured eardrum. He went and saw a doctor who advised him not to fly due to his injury and prescribed the antibiotic Caprazil. Mittank's friends wanted to stay with him, but he insisted he was fine on his own and told them to follow the original travel plan and fly home on July 7th, which they did. Mittank checked out of the resort the same time as friends and checked into the Hotel Color Varna for one night. The hotel was cheap and close to the airport. However, a day after his friends left, he began to act paranoid. While at the hotel, Mittank called his mother, Sandra Mittank. In a whisper, he told her that people were trying to kill or rob him and that she should cancel his credit cards. The closed-circuit television cameras in the hotel recorded him pacing up and down the halls, looking out windows and hiding in an elevator. At 1 a.m., he left the hotel before returning, and about an hour later, it is not known what he did in the intervening period. In the morning, he once again called his mother, telling her that the people pursuing him were getting closer. Mittank was last seen at Varna Airport in Bulgaria on July 8th, 2014, the day that he was hoping to fly home to Germany. He texted his mother that he had arrived at the airport. He went to consult with the airport doctor, Kosta Kostov. Kostov later described his behavior as nervous and erratic. According to Kostov, he told Mittank that he was fine and could return home. However, Mittank did not leave his office, expressing doubt about the medication that he was taking. At that time, a construction worker entered the office. The airport was undergoing renovation at the time. Kostov said that Mittank then began to tremble. He yelled, I don't want to die here. I have to get out of here. He then got up and fled the office. He left behind all of his baggage, which included his wallet, mobile phone, and passport. He was captured by airport security cameras fleeing the terminals. Like I said, the most famous disappearance video in history. Once outside, he can be seen on the footage jogging away from the airport, climbing a fence, running into a meadow, and sprinting off camera to the direction of an adjacent forest. Those are the last confirmed whereabouts. So you, once again, maybe you've seen this video without realizing it. I will say it again. This is a video of a guy. It's an airport video of a guy just hightailing it. I think he's wearing shorts out of this airport. If you've seen that video, that is Lars Mittank, Mittank. Like I said, I think it's even more famous video than the videos of Brian Schaefer going to the Ugly Tuna and then all the people watching the video not seeing him leaving. I think this video is even more famous than that, mainly because I think Lars's disappearance is known all over the world. I'm not sure anybody in Europe knows about Brian Schaefer, though. So what do I think about this? I know this might sound crazy. I think he faked it. Why do I say that? First of all, surely nobody hired anybody to beat him up the night before over a soccer match. In fact, I don't care what they were arguing about, politics, religion, whether the moon is made out of rock or cheese. Nobody hired anybody to beat him up. I'm sure these guys, if they wanted to beat him up, they could have just done it themselves. But it's very clear, at least on Wikipedia, and Wikipedia is more accurate than a lot of people give it for give credit to it, especially when it comes to disappearances. More accurate than is realized. But it's very clear. He told his friends he was beaten up by 4 men hired by the soccer group in the bar. That did not happen. Hired. What? You pay somebody to go beat up somebody head on. It just, I mean, what are we talking about? So that is crazy. Now, what also stands out to me is it says he was suffering an injured jaw and a ruptured eardrum. What's mighty convenient that both of those injuries would not be obvious. You can't look at somebody and know that they have a ruptured eardrum or not. You can't look at somebody and tell if they have an injured jaw or not. You know, if, of course, you have a broken arm, that's obvious. You have a broken leg, that's obvious. But he said he had an injured jaw. Well, you can kind of fake an injured jaw if you like talk funny. So it's interesting to me that the injuries he said he had are not ones that would be obvious to the common person. Now, it also would lead us to believe that what did he do? Did he go to a doctor to get checked out that night? Well, it's weird then that one doctor said, oh, you have an eardrum issue, you shouldn't fly. And that is true. That is true. That, of course, because of the way airplanes work with the pressurization and everything, if you're having any eardrum problems or stuffed up or anything, your ears are going to have a hard time equalizing inside the plane. Remember, when planes are not equalized to sea level, when you're inside an airplane, the inside is pressurized to about 8,000 feet. Now, the reason they don't do it at sea level is because that's too expensive to do. So they pick a air pressure setting in which people can still breathe comfortably, but the jet doesn't have to be so pressurized that the jet has to be made more stronger. Because the more pressure you put inside, if you put the pressure to sea level, that means it's harder to keep all that air in. You don't want it to burst out. So people with ear problems can have a problem with that. So maybe some of you have had that issue. That's what's going on. So somebody told him, you have a ruptured eardrum, don't fly. He went to the airport anyway. And in addition, he went to the doctor there. And what did the doctor say? The doctor said he got checked out. Or what's it say here? I want to read this. He went to consult with the airport doctor, Costa Kostov. They even have the name there. And Kostov later described his behavior as nervous and erratic. But according to Kostov, he told Mittank that he was fine and could return home. So one doctor just 12 hours before that said you shouldn't fly. And then the doctor at the airport said, you're fine. That's very interesting. And, he disappeared for a while, didn't tell his friends where he was going, and all of these things. I think he faked it. I realize this is probably a very minority view. Maybe there are people. All I'm doing is looking at the facts. I'm looking at what other people have thought about this disappearance over the years. It's 11 years old. I have no idea what the most popular theory is. Of course, I'm guessing the most popular theory is that he just lost his mind. That's not really the way I go with this, because I just don't think this is the behavior of somebody who really lost his mind. He's telling his mother, that they're following him and everything. He went to the airport anyway. and seemingly calmly just walked in there. And then all of a sudden, when he's in the doctor's office, he gets crazy again. I think he just didn't want to go back to Germany. And he just blended in Bulgaria for whatever reason. I have it right. I think he faked it. My reasoning, there's no proof that there was a fight. Once again, that I've already stated. People hired it to beat him up. I don't think so. Why didn't he just say that those guys beat him up? He was paranoid, allegedly, but he went to the airport anyway. In addition, he just happened to run off when he wasn't carrying his wallet, phone, and other items. Those are items, like, of course, for a guy that we usually have in our pockets. And he just happened to run off without those items that might be able to identify him if, for example, he's running off and the police stop him. Hey, the guy ran off. Hey, catch him. Something to think about. In addition, even though he seemingly went to a doctor and got a prescription that he readily accepted, they said he never did. They checked the medication. He never took it. Now, it says that he was afraid because he was paranoid. He didn't want to take it. Then why did he take it in the first place? Why did he accept it? If he was so paranoid, once again, why did he go to a doctor in the first place? To me, this seems like enough inconsistencies to me to think he was not crazy. This sounds like who was actually a person who actually lost her mind. Remember Alyssa Lamb? Remember what she was doing in that hotel and walking around and in the elevator, and she ended up being found inside the water tower on top of that. Remember that death, very strange and everything else. This almost sounds to me like Lars Mittank was trying to set up the same kind of thing, walking around, being seen on video and knowing he'd be seen on video and putting a lot of work into making it look like he was crazy. But then he just happens to go to the place with the most, an airport where there are more cameras than in any other type of building. And then he's seen running off. Rockford, I must have missed some comments here. Hold on. And don't call me Shirley, funny. Rockford reminds me of the case of Terrence Woods in Idaho, sprinted away from the rest of his crew when they were filming a show. He was last seen running down a cliff. He's never been found. I guess it's kind of like that, Rockford. Yeah. Maybe he ran out. Maybe he was faking it too. I know about that disappearance. I probably don't know it well enough to make any good insight. But, I have some additional things here. I just have a few minutes left. But to really, I do have a list of things that would help me better understand this and maybe get to know, and outside of just talking to somebody who really knew him well. What I'd like to know is anything found out about Lars after the disappearance that wasn't known before. So he goes missing in Bulgaria. He doesn't come back. After some point, they start going through Lars's, I don't know where he lived, his stuff in Germany. Was anything found in his stuff? And it doesn't have to be dirty or sexual or anything, but anything found out about him that wasn't known about him before he went missing. Sometimes I ask that question. I would also want to know how long had the trip been planned with him and his friends, and who actually planned it. And I would want to know also, had Lars been to Bulgaria before? This would all be very, very important to me. Who actually decided for them to go there? Was this like an annual thing with these guys? Did somebody else plan it and then ask Lars to go? Was he excited about it? Did he readily accept to go? Did he not? Had they ever gone to other countries as a group before? I would need to know to really start to really narrow it down, these are questions that I would need to have answered. But I'm not going to shy away from the idea that I think this might have been a put on, simply because he, for some reason, didn't want to go back to Germany. And that's why it would help to know more about what was he doing in Germany, what was his job, what was his relationship status, on and on and on and on and on and on and on, to know that. Because I do not believe that somebody hired, even though he told his friends this, that other people, hired for somebody to beat him up. Rockford, yes, at least very sad. Aaron Gillern disappeared in a similar manner in Vienna, Austria in 2007. He was last seen wearing right from a club. Okay. Rockford, what would Mittank's motive be of faking at a local girl trouble in Germany, legal problems? Well, like I said, this would help me know this a lot better. There could be many reasons. There could be many reasons. I just don't know. But it just doesn't seem very consistent, the way it's described about what went on in that final 24 hours before they were all to go back to Germany. I mean, what are the odds? Right before he's supposed to go back, all this happened. What are the odds? So it could be a lot of different things, Rockford. That's why I'm asking the questions. It just on his behavior alone, that's all I can go on. It just doesn't seem consistent with somebody who's lost his mind. Before the show ends, I'm curious to know what is staring at us on your wall behind you? What is staring at us on your wall behind you? Well, this right here is a Pirates of the Caribbean. Some of you might remember back from my Madeira Beach place. That was always in the background for the live show. Really, really in the background. That's Johnny Depp. That's Curse of the Black Pearl poster that is actually signed by Johnny Depp back there. Lisa, tonight's a slight edge to Ed Denzel. Yeah, it's a slight edge, yes. So that's what I think about Lars Mittank. I think it was a put on. There you go. I know I'm going to be in a minority on that, but it's the way it goes. Yeah, Cranky. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Anything else? Next Thursday, November 6th, I'm appearing with Dr. Telesco. It's going to be my first use of the Unfound database. It's almost ready for public consumption. I'm continuing to read the Missing Persons book. It's not a bad book, but shockingly, I still haven't gotten to anything regarding disappearances that might be murders. It's all about trafficking and people who choose to leave on their own and asylum seekers. And there's nothing at all yet about just your regular run-of-the-mill husband makes wife disappear. Nothing yet, which I'm a little surprised. The Found episode for all YouTube and Patreon supporters is done. Be looking for that tomorrow. And I will record the next Unfound now tomorrow for everybody. And that is going to be in regards to a young man who went missing recently in Kansas. So that is, I still have a couple minutes left. Regarding, maybe I can go over this. The Chuck Jones poll. In the discussion group, about 75% of the people decided that Chuck actually, yes, did go into the river. I can't say I'm surprised by that result at all. But the other 25% did think that it was foul play. So maybe I'm not surprised by that either. In the think tank, patreon.com/Unfound podcast. Pretty much everybody thought that he went into the river by reasons of suicide. In the blog that I write there, once again, patreon.com/Unfound podcast. I thought that he went into the river, but I was not leaning toward the suicide idea. Good show, Hull. Thank you, Joyce. Love you, my friend. Yeah, thank you. Love you too, Joyce. Rockford, if I were trying to disappear, Bulgaria wouldn't be a bad choice. It's affordable. One can probably live quietly. It's off the beaten path, but a nice place. So you're making my argument for me, Rockford. I love it when people do that. So that is about it for tonight. That was everything. I didn't get to the art heist. I was going to talk about last week, didn't get to it tonight, but it does seem some of those people for the loof heist did have been caught, but not all of them. I did kind of decide that it was not a professional job. But I am going to remind you, being that there will not be an episode this week, you might want to check out this podcast from 3 years ago, Devil Town, regarding the disappearance, the still unsolved disappearance of Kelly Wilson. I think there's a lot of still questions out there that could have been answered in the series, but this is not a criticism of the guy who did it. I think he did a spectacular job. It's just, you could tell, doesn't have a lot of disappearance experience. So certainly with some of the interviews and things I would have handled in a different way, that is not a criticism of him. But it just shows you how crazy things can get when you allow them to get crazy, especially in a smaller town and everything. And I do have, as I expressed last week, I have my own ideas about Kelly Wilson, but listening to that podcast did maybe change my mind on a few things. So you might want to check that out, Devil Town from 3 years ago. And I have been in contact with the host. I congratulate him on that. So there you go. And Rockford, halfway through, high quality draws you in. There you go. Take Rockford's recommendation. That's all I got. No show this Friday. I'm reminding you, it'll be on your feed to remind you again. Everybody, thanks for joining me tonight, listening to all my rambling. Lisa, thank you. You are very generous once again. Charlie, say hi to the kids for me. I'll say hi to Michael for you when I see him on Wednesday. And keep your heads on swivels, everybody out there. Do not end up on my podcast. Good night.